Good morning, Aidan. Good morning, Ciaran. First question. What led up to the meeting with the Oireachtas Committee last week?
Well, Michael, as you know, both the Programme for Government and National Pension Framework have proposed significant changes to the current tax regime that will apply to pensions. They're looking at reducing the tax relief on contributions from currently the marginal rate for high taxpayers 41% down to a flat 23%. And they're also proposing to tax-free lump sum above €200,000. So obviously, as an association, we feel this is going to have a serious impact on pension provision out there. I wanted to let the policymakers know exactly the impact of these particular changes, and to point out to them that pension funding in Ireland, the real problem is not in relation to coverage, i.e. how many people actually have pensions. That is a problem, but also the fact that people aren't funding enough to provide for adequate income retirements. And what tax relief does, and tax relief at 41% does, it makes pension funding affordable. So we wanted to point out that the impacts of those changes. But we also wanted to go with a positive message, and that is that we could use pension funds much more productively to help us as an economy and as a country get out of the difficult environment we are in at the moment. If they could just relax the rules on where the monies could be invested and invest more of the monies at home as opposed to Germany and the US and so on. So it was in there to try put our points across and lobby the government, lobby the decision makers to leave the current regime as is.
Aidan, obviously you met the Oireachtas Committee last Thursday. What actually happened on the day?
Well, there was four of us in the delegation, led by Ciaran, myself as head of the Pensions Committee, Gordon Mellon and Rona Burke, who is Deputy President of the Irish Brokers Association. So we each covered a different aspect of the information we wanted to provide to the committee. Ciaran led off by presenting on the issue in relation to the overall treatment of pension schemes, putting forward the case that there is a positive aspect that pensions play in the market, and equally challenging some of the assumptions made in terms of the benefits of tax saving and the focus of current policy. I then covered the issue of the positive role of pensions and how they can play in the marketplace. There's three aspects to that. They can be a provider of investment into private business, they can act as an investor in government debt, and indeed they can help with infrastructure. Gordon then covered the piece as a practitioner advising clients on retirement and looking at how that is affecting clients and making them uncertain as to what's happening in the current market. And uncertainty leads to indecision and inaction, and therefore people aren't saving properly for retirement. And Rona finished up by covering off the position from an advisor. She was pointing out that from the first time ever in her professional life, the position now is that it may not be good advice to tell somebody to take out a pension, and that's quite a shocking position to be in.
And who attended? Who was there on behalf of the Oireachtas Committee?
The Oireachtas Committee represents all the political parties, and therefore there were senior individuals such as Michael Noonan from Fine Gael, Joan Burton from Fianna Fáil, or from Labour, and Frank Fahy from Fianna Fáil, Terence Flanagan from Fine Gael was there, Brian Hayes from Fine Gael. Quite a number of people came in and went. Senator Fergal Quinn came in, and all of them had questions for us on the papers that we presented. Both the original submission and the statements we made at the opening of the presentation were queried in detail by all the members there, so they had a very strong interest in it, and ultimately resulted in the papers we'd submitted being recommended to be sent to the Department of Finance for them to take on board in their formation of policy.
Okay, so was that the Oireachtas Committee's response to the four papers on? Or?
That was the formal response, yes. I believe each of the individual parties may well take some of the information provided back into their own policy forming units as well. But certainly from an official perspective, it has been forwarded to the Department of Finance to feed into their decision making.
And from your perspective, Ciaran, was it a worthwhile exercise?
Well, it was a very worthwhile exercise, because you have to consider that the Irish Brokers Association represents 5,000 staff and 500 brokers. Our members are responsible for 70% of all pension contributions made in this jurisdiction to date. And we recently surveyed our members, and the results of that survey were that 97% of the members said that their clients would either stop pension contributions or reduce pension contributions if the tax reliefs were adjusted downwards. Because simply put, their standard of living would reduce by 8%, so they would have a decision to make: do I reduce or stop contributions, or do I try to live as best I can? And again, we really wanted to get this point across to the ministers, get this point across to TDs, people who are public servants, who do enjoy public sector pensions and don't have the worries of the vast majority of us that have to fund the vast bulk of our own pensions privately.
One of the things that was of particular interest to them was the notion in terms of cutting tax relief. The latest estimate that the Minister for Finance has produced is a potential 2.6 billion in tax relief foregone by the state each year, and obviously that's a very attractive number in the light of the current finances of the government. But we were able to point out to them that the figures were actually wrong. Basically, they were chasing fool's gold. The figure for fund performance in pension funds for the last 10 years is 0.2%, which represents, based on the current fund values, a profit of about 144 million. Therefore, the figures are assuming that they can tax those to a tune of 900 million. It just doesn't make sense. That number isn't there. Once you start analysing the numbers, you quickly realise that there's far, far less available than commentators might believe. So the numbers are based, the 2.6 billion are based on 2007 numbers and contribution rates at that time, which everybody that works in the industry is well aware contribution levels now are far reduced on that. Furthermore, they don't allow for the fact that many individuals would cease contributions or reduce contributions if the tax relief gone, as Ciaran has identified in the survey carried out with members, and that in turn would have an enormous impact. And the final point in relation to that is that the figures are unfair in the sense that they include the cost of a benefit in kind on a benefit for a private sector worker, but include no estimate of the tax that would be got if the public sector worker was taxed to benefit in kind. Our estimate that if they followed through in the numbers would add 2.5 billion to the tax yield, but it would double the tax for every public sector worker, double the total amount of tax they pay, and for TDs and ministers would eliminate their salary in their entirety because the tax payable would be in excess of the value of their actual salaries. So I think that particularly focused the attention of some of the parties there.
And final question, what are the next steps in relation to the lobbying that was done?
Well, I think this was just a start. I think it's important to point out that it was great to get in front of the Oireachtas Committee and representatives from all the major parties that either are in government today or will be in government at some stage in the future. But I will emphasise it was only a start. We do plan to meet the Minister for Social Protection, O'Keefe, in the coming weeks, and we also are going to continue to meet some of the leaders of the opposition because we think they might have a role to play in the future. And also we have a twin-pronged approach. We're going to meet them and discuss our views, but also we're going to let them release to the media, let them know our views, so that there's a very, very strong campaign that will build up to the budget on the 6th of December that really, interfering with the reliefs that currently apply to pensions would have a very, very negative impact, not just on pension funding here in Ireland, but on the future of the state, because the burden is just growing and growing and growing.
Okay, Aidan, Ciaran, thank you for your time.
Thank you.